You're eating less, you're trying harder, and yet that stubborn belly fat won't move. What if the real reason has nothing to do with calories at all? Let's talk about the one thing many men notice first when they look in the mirror, but rarely talk about out loud. That soft, stubborn weight around the midsection, the kind that shows up even when you're not overeating, the kind that refuses to disappear no matter how many push-ups, diets, or early mornings you throw at it. For a lot of men, belly fat feels confusing. You're not lazy, you're not careless, you might even be disciplined, and yet your waistline keeps expanding while your energy drops, your strength plateaus, and your confidence takes a hit. Quietly, slowly, almost invisibly, most men are told the same simple story: eat less, burn more, be stricter. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If it were really just about calories, most men wouldn't be struggling like this. Especially men who used to be lean. Especially men who train, work hard, and try to do the right things. Belly fat in men isn't just a cosmetic issue. It's a biological signal. It's often the first visible sign that hormones are shifting, stress is accumulating, sleep is breaking down, and recovery isn't keeping up with life anymore. And the older you get, the louder that signal becomes. What makes this worse is that many men internalize the problem. They assume it's a lack of willpower, or age catching up, or something they just have to accept. So they push harder, restrict more, and end up more tired, more frustrated, and no closer to the body they want. But here's the good news. Once you understand what belly fat is actually responding to, everything changes. Fat loss stops being a punishment and starts becoming a process you can control. You stop fighting your body and start working with it. In this video, we're going to break down what's really going on beneath the surface, why belly fat shows up when it does, why it sticks around, and why most advice aimed at men completely misses the mark. If you stay with me, you'll walk away seeing your body differently, understanding your biology more clearly, and knowing exactly why this problem is solvable. This isn't about chasing a six-pack. It's about reclaiming energy, strength, confidence, and long-term health. And it starts by learning the truth most men are never told about belly fat. At some point, usually after your mid-30s, something strange starts to happen. You wake up one morning and notice your belt feels tighter. Not because you've been overeating, not because you stopped moving, but because fat has started settling in one very specific place, right around your waist. This is where most men get confused. You might still have strong arms, your legs might feel solid, your shoulders still look broad, but your stomach seems to be playing by different rules. That's because it is. Belly fat in men is not just stored energy. It behaves differently. It responds to different signals, and it shows up for reasons that have very little to do with laziness or lack of discipline. When you were younger, your body handled stress, food, and recovery differently. Hormones were working in your favor. Muscle mass was easier to maintain. Fat storage was more balanced. Your system could absorb late nights, heavy meals, and hard training without much consequence. As you age, those internal signals start to change. Testosterone slowly declines. Stress hormones stay elevated longer. Insulin, the hormone that manages blood sugar, becomes less efficient. None of this happens overnight. It happens quietly, over years, and belly fat is often the first visible sign that these shifts are happening. What makes belly fat unique is how sensitive it is to hormonal changes. Fat around the waist has more receptors for stress hormones than fat in other areas. That means when life gets busier, sleep gets shorter, and pressure increases, your body is more likely to store fat right there. Even if your overall weight doesn't change much, you might recognize this pattern. You eat roughly the same, you move roughly the same, but work stress increases, responsibility increases, sleep becomes lighter, and suddenly your midsection feels softer, heavier, harder to control. That's not coincidence. That's biology responding to environment. This is why belly fat often shows up during periods when men are building careers, raising families, or carrying more mental load than ever before. Your body isn't trying to sabotage you. It's trying to protect you. The problem is that protection comes with a cost. Another reason belly fat behaves differently is how it interacts with hormones. Fat tissue around the waist is metabolically active. It doesn't just sit there. It sends signals back into your system. And unfortunately, those signals can further reduce testosterone and increase inflammation, creating a loop that keeps fat locked in place. That's why many men notice a frustrating cycle. The more belly fat they gain, the harder it feels to lose. Energy drops, motivation dips, strength doesn't respond like it used to, and the usual advice of eating less just leaves them feeling drained and irritable. This isn't because you're broken. It's because your body is operating under a different rule book than it did at 25. Belly fat is also closely linked to how your body manages fuel. When muscle mass decreases slightly with age, your body becomes less efficient at using calories for strength and performance. Excess energy is more likely to be stored, and again, the waist is the preferred location. This is why two men can eat the same meal, train the same way, and get completely different results depending on their hormonal health and stress levels. Calories matter, but context matters more. If you've ever wondered why dieting seems to shrink your arms and chest before touching your stomach, this is why. Your body will protect belly fat longer because it views it as essential reserve during perceived stress. Understanding this changes everything. Instead of blaming yourself, you start asking better questions. What signals is my body responding to? What environment am I creating internally? What does my system think it needs right now? When you see belly fat as feedback instead of failure, you regain control. You stop chasing extremes. You stop punishing yourself, and you start working with your biology instead of against it. This is the foundation, because once you understand why belly fat behaves differently, you can finally approach fat loss in a way that restores strength, energy, and confidence instead of draining it. Belly fat isn't the enemy. It's a message your body is sending, and learning how to read it is the first real step toward taking your body back. Once you understand that belly fat isn't just about food, the next layer becomes impossible to ignore. Stress, not the dramatic kind. The quiet daily pressure that never really switches off. Most men don't think of stress as physical. You think of it as mental, deadlines, responsibilities, financial pressure, being needed by everyone while having very little space to recover yourself. But your body doesn't separate stress into mental and physical categories. To your nervous system, stress is stress. When stress becomes constant, your body shifts into protection mode. It prioritizes survival over performance. It slows down fat burning. It encourages storage. And once again, the waist becomes the preferred place. This is why some of the hardest working men you know struggle the most with belly fat. They're disciplined. They show up. They push through fatigue. They handle pressure without complaining. And ironically, that toughness works against them biologically. When you wake up already thinking about work, emails, or responsibilities, your stress hormones rise early. When you rush through the morning, skip recovery, or stack caffeine on top of fatigue, your system stays alert all day. And when you finally sit down at night, your body doesn't fully relax. It stays on guard. Over time, this constant alert state changes how your body handles energy. Instead of burning fuel efficiently, it starts holding onto it, not because you ate too much, but because your body believes it's living in an unpredictable environment. You might notice this pattern. You eat clean during the week. You try to train, but progress stalls. Or worse, your stomach feels tighter even when the scale doesn't move much. That's stress-driven fat storage at work. Sleep plays a huge role here. When sleep is light or broken, stress hormones stay elevated the next day. That affects hunger signals, energy levels, and how your body uses calories. You're more likely to crave quick energy. You're less likely to recover fully from workouts, and your waistline reflects it. This is why two men with the same diet can have completely different results depending on how they sleep and manage pressure. One feels lean and sharp. The other feels inflamed, sluggish, and stuck. Stress also affects how your body responds to exercise. When stress is high, intense training can actually backfire. Instead of signaling strength and adaptation, your body perceives more threat. Recovery slows, fat loss stalls, motivation drops. That doesn't mean exercise is bad. It means timing, intensity, and recovery matter more as you age. Your body wants signals of safety before it lets go of stored fat. Think about times in your life when stress was lower, maybe a vacation, a slower season, a period when you slept better and laughed more. Often fat loss happened almost effortlessly then, not because you were stricter, but because your nervous system felt safe. This is a hard truth for many men. You can't out-discipline a stressed nervous system forever. At some point, your body will push back. And this is where mindset shifts become powerful. Instead of asking, why am I not losing fat? You start asking, what is my body reacting to right now? That question alone changes how you approach your day. Small adjustments can make a big difference. Slowing down the morning, creating separation between work and rest, giving your body signals that it's not under constant threat. These are not soft ideas, they are strategic. Men who learn to manage stress effectively don't just lose belly fat more easily, they regain energy. They think clearer. They feel stronger in their own body again. The goal isn't to eliminate stress. That's unrealistic. The goal is to stop living in a constant state of tension, because when your body feels safe, it stops clinging to reserves. Belly fat often isn't stubborn because you're doing something wrong. It's stubborn because your body doesn't feel secure enough to let it go. And the moment you start creating that sense of internal safety, everything else begins to move again. There's another layer to belly fat that almost no one explains clearly, and once you see it, a lot of frustration suddenly makes sense. This is where hormones quietly take control of the outcome, even when you think you're doing everything right. You don't wake up one day with extra weight around your waist because of a single bad meal or a missed workout. It happens slowly, almost invisibly, as your internal signals change over time. And the most powerful signal of all is how your body handles blood sugar and energy. When you eat, your body decides whether to burn that energy or store it. That decision isn't made by willpower, it's made by chemistry. And as men move past their 30s, that chemistry becomes less forgiving. You might recognize this pattern. You eat a normal meal, nothing excessive. But an hour later, you feel sleepy, unfocused, or hungry again. That's not weakness. That's your body struggling to use fuel efficiently. Over time, repeated spikes and crashes train your body to store energy instead of using it. And once again, the abdomen becomes the preferred location. Not because it looks bad, but because it's metabolically convenient. This is why belly fat often feels different than fat elsewhere. It's softer, it's stubborn, it doesn't respond the same way to exercise. That's because it's deeply tied to how your body regulates energy, not just calories. As this process continues, your body becomes less responsive to the signals that normally tell it to burn fat. You train, but recovery feels slower. You eat less, but progress stalls. And mentally, that's exhausting. What makes this even more frustrating is that the habits that used to work stop working. In your 20s, skipping a meal or adding extra workouts might have leaned you out quickly. In your 40s, those same tactics often backfire. When fuel delivery becomes unstable, your body protects itself. It holds on to reserves. It lowers output. It prioritizes survival over aesthetics. This doesn't mean your metabolism is broken. It means it has adapted to repeated stress, inconsistent fueling, and poor recovery. And adaptations can be reversed when you understand them. The way you eat matters, but timing, composition, and consistency matter more now than ever. Big swings in energy intake send confusing signals. Long gaps followed by large meals keep your system reactive. That reactivity encourages storage. You might notice that when meals are more balanced and predictable, energy becomes steadier. cravings reduce, focus improves, and slowly, almost quietly, your waist begins to respond. This is also why extreme dieting often fails men long term. Severe restriction increases stress signals and worsens energy regulation. Your body interprets it as scarcity, not strategy. The goal isn't to eat less and suffer. The goal is to eat in a way that reassures your system. When your body trusts that fuel is coming consistently, it becomes willing to release what it's stored for emergencies. This is where patience becomes powerful, not passive patience, but informed patience. You stop fighting your body and start working with it. Men who succeed long term usually make this shift without even realizing it. They stop chasing exhaustion. They stop punishing themselves for being human. They build routines that stabilize energy first, and fat loss follows. And the mental shift is huge. When your energy stops swinging, confidence returns. Decisions feel easier. Discipline feels lighter. You're no longer battling your own biology every day. Belly fat isn't a character flaw. It's feedback. It's your body communicating that something about energy regulation needs attention. When you listen instead of fight, the body responds faster than you expect. Because the moment your system feels stable again, it stops holding on to what it no longer needs. There's another force working behind the scenes that almost never gets blamed, even though it quietly shapes your waistline every single day. And that force is chronic stress, the kind that doesn't feel dramatic but never really turns off. This isn't about being anxious or overwhelmed all the time. In fact, many men with stubborn belly fat would say they're handling life just fine. They show up to work, they provide, they push through. And that's exactly the problem. Your body doesn't measure stress the way your mind does. It doesn't care if you feel strong or in control. It only responds to signals, deadlines, poor sleep, long hours, skipped meals, constant stimulation. All of that registers as pressure. When that pressure becomes constant, your body adapts by shifting priorities. It stops focusing on performance and starts focusing on protection. And protection for a male body often looks like storing fat in the center. This is why belly fat is so tightly linked to stress. It's not random, it's strategic. Abdominal fat sits close to vital organs. It's easy for the body to access in emergencies. From a survival perspective, it makes sense. The problem is that modern stress never ends. There's no clear threat and no clear recovery, just a low-level grind that stretches on for years. You might relate to this. You wake up already thinking. You move from one responsibility to the next. Even downtime isn't restful. Your mind stays switched on. And your body never gets the message that it's safe to let go. Over time, this state changes how your body allocates energy. Muscle becomes harder to maintain. Fat becomes easier to store, especially around the waist. What makes this frustrating is that stress often pushes men to train harder or eat less, thinking discipline will fix it. But more strain on an already strained system usually makes things worse. You train intensely, but recovery feels shallow. You diet aggressively, but cravings increase. Motivation drops, sleep quality declines, and the belly stays. This isn't because you're doing something wrong. It's because your body is interpreting your effort as more stress, not a solution. Men often underestimate how powerful recovery truly is. Not rest as in laziness, but recovery as in allowing the nervous system to downshift. When your system never downshifts, it never releases stored energy. It stays guarded. This is why two men can eat the same foods and follow similar routines, yet have very different results. One is built in moments of calm, sleep, and consistency. The other lives in constant output mode. The difference shows up at the waist. Stress also changes how your body responds to food. Meals that should fuel you instead feel heavy. Energy crashes follow. That creates a cycle where you rely more on stimulants. pushing the system even harder. And again, the body adapts. It tightens its grip. What begins to shift everything is when you stop trying to dominate your body and start reassuring it. Small changes matter more than extreme ones here. Better sleep timing, slower mornings, eating without rushing, training with intention instead of punishment. Even brief moments of quiet can send powerful signals. You don't need to eliminate stress. That's unrealistic. You just need to interrupt it often enough that your body remembers what safety feels like. When that happens, something interesting occurs. Inflammation reduces, sleep deepens, energy stabilizes, and fat storage stops being the default response. Many men are shocked when this begins to work because it feels too simple, but biology favors balance, not force. As stress levels normalize, your body becomes willing to change again. Fat loss feels less like a fight. Strength becomes easier to maintain. Motivation returns without constant self-talk. This is when confidence shifts. Not the loud kind, but the grounded kind. The kind that comes from feeling in control of your body again. Belly fat is often the final signal your body sends before it demands change. Not louder effort, smarter care. And when you give your system permission to recover, it finally gives you permission to release what it's been holding on to. There's one more piece that often surprises men because it feels almost too basic to matter, yet it quietly determines whether belly fat stays or goes, and that's how your body responds to movement as you age. Most men assume fat loss comes from pushing harder, more intensity, more sweat, less rest. That mindset worked earlier in life, so it feels logical to keep using it. But your body changes, even if your mindset doesn't. After your 30s, your body becomes more sensitive to how movement is delivered, not just how much. Short bursts of intense effort still matter, but only when they're balanced with recovery and consistency. If movement feels chaotic, random, or punishing, your body treats it like stress. And as you already know, stress encourages storage, especially around the waist. You might recognize this cycle. You decide it's time to get serious. You jump into hard workouts. Your joints ache. Your sleep worsens. You feel drained by midday. And within weeks, motivation fades. It's not because movement is bad. It's because the type and structure of movement no longer match what your body needs. As men age, the body responds best to movement that signals strength, stability, and capability, not exhaustion. When movement reinforces confidence rather than depletion, the hormonal response shifts. This is why walking, resistance training, and moderate intensity work become so powerful. They don't spike stress unnecessarily. They improve insulin sensitivity. They preserve muscle, and they send a message of readiness instead of threat. Many men underestimate walking because it feels too simple, but walking is one of the strongest signals of safety your body recognizes. It lowers stress hormones while encouraging fat use as fuel. You don't need marathon sessions. Consistent daily movement changes how your body processes energy throughout the day, and over time, that directly impacts belly fat. Strength training plays a different role. It tells your body you're still capable, still useful, still strong. That message matters more than calories burned. When muscle is maintained, your body becomes less eager to store fat. Muscle is metabolically expensive. The body prefers to keep fuel circulating when muscle is active. The problem is when strength training becomes punishment instead of practice. Grinding workouts with no recovery raise stress and stall progress. Smart training feels challenging but leaves you energized, not wrecked. You finish feeling capable, not defeated. This is a subtle but critical distinction. The body doesn't respond to suffering. It responds to signals of strength and stability. When movement becomes predictable and supportive, your metabolism becomes more flexible. You burn fuel more easily. You recover faster. You sleep better. Men who shift into this pattern often notice something surprising. Their waist begins to shrink without extreme effort. Not quickly, but steadily. And that steadiness is the key. The body trusts steady inputs. Movement also impacts digestion, blood sugar control, and sleep quality. All of those feed into how fat is stored or released. Think about how you feel on days you move early versus days you sit for hours. Energy flows differently. Appetite feels calmer. Mood improves. Those aren't coincidences. Over time, your body starts anticipating movement. It becomes more efficient. It stops guarding energy so aggressively. This is when belly fat becomes less stubborn, not because you forced it away, but because the conditions that created it no longer exist. You don't need perfect workouts, you need repeatable ones. Men who win long term choose movements they can sustain. They train in a way that fits their life, not fights it. And as movement becomes a normal part of your day instead of a stressful event, your body begins to shift from storage mode to performance mode. That's when fat loss feels less like work and more like a natural byproduct of a body that feels strong again. Because when your movement tells your body you're capable, it finally stops holding on to protection it no longer needs. At some point, every man reaches a moment where the frustration isn't just about fat anymore. It's about trust. Trust in your body. Trust that effort still leads somewhere. Trust that change is still possible. This is where everything comes together, because belly fat isn't just a physical issue. It's a signal that your body has been adapting for years without you fully understanding the rules it's playing by. Most men think the solution is one missing trick, one supplement, one routine, one burst of motivation. But the truth is simpler and more empowering than that. Your body is always responding logically to the environment you place it in. When sleep is short, stress is high, movement is chaotic, and food signals are confusing, your body chooses protection. It stores, it slows, it conserves. When those signals change, your body changes with them. This is the part many men miss. Fat loss at this stage of life isn't about forcing a result. It's about rebuilding alignment. Alignment between how you live and how your biology works. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need extreme discipline. You don't need to suffer your way back into shape. You need consistency that your body can believe in. Think about the times in your life when things worked effortlessly. When energy felt steady, when your waist didn't demand constant attention. That wasn't luck, that was alignment. Over time, life pulls you out of that alignment. Work gets heavier, sleep shortens, meals become rushed, movement becomes optional instead of natural. None of that makes you weak, it makes you modern, but your body still runs on older rules. And once you respect those rules again, progress feels different. Instead of white-knuckling through days, you start noticing small wins. You wake up clearer. Hunger feels calmer. Your midsection softens slowly, without panic. This is how sustainable change actually feels. Quiet, predictable, reassuring. And that's important because your body doesn't respond to motivation. It responds to patterns. When patterns stabilize, hormones stabilize. When hormones stabilize, fat loss becomes possible again. Men often underestimate how powerful this shift is because it doesn't feel dramatic. There's no crash, no rush, just steady momentum. And momentum builds confidence. You stop negotiating with yourself every morning. You stop obsessing over mirrors and scales. You start trusting the process because it's finally working with you instead of against you. This is where longevity comes into play. When you stop chasing quick fixes and start building systems your body agrees with, you don't just lose fat, you gain resilience. You move better, you think clearer, you recover faster, and the version of you that shows up daily feels more capable. That's the real goal. Not a number, not a look, a feeling of control. Control over your energy, control over your habits, control over your future. Belly fat fades when it's no longer needed. And it's no longer needed when your body feels safe, strong, and supported again. That doesn't happen overnight, but it happens reliably when you stop fighting biology and start cooperating with it. And once that shift clicks, the frustration lifts. because you realize you were never broken. You were just following signals you were never taught to question. And the moment you change the signals, your body finally changes the outcome. The most important thing to understand is this: your body isn't working against you. It's been responding intelligently to the signals you've been giving it for years. And the moment those signals change, your body changes with them. Belly fat is not a life sentence, and it's not a failure of discipline. It's feedback. When you learn how sleep, stress, movement, and fuel work together, you stop guessing and start taking control. Progress becomes predictable instead of frustrating. You don't need extremes. You don't need perfection. You need awareness, consistency, and patience. When you give your body what it actually needs, strength returns, energy rises, and confidence follows naturally. This isn't about chasing a younger version of yourself. It's about becoming a stronger, more capable version of who you are now. And that version is closer than you think, because the power to change has been in your hands the entire time.